good morning, everyone. My name is Paloma Mayorga. I am the development coordinator at Big Medium. Thank you for joining us today for Coffee Chats. These talks are part of our Creative Standard program, through which leaders in the creative community share personal and professional experiences to inspire others pursuing careers in art. Today, we have a really special conversation between the amazing filmmaker and sculptor Virginia Lee Montgomery and artist and sculptor Raul De Lara, both of whom are in this year's Austin Studio Tour, which begins this weekend. I'll hand it off to Virginia and Raul, and they have a really exciting new format for coffee chats this morning. So yeah, take it away, Virginia.
Great. So hi, everyone. My name is Virginia Lee Montgomery. I also go by VLM. As Paloma beautifully said, and thank you, Paloma, I am an experimental metaphysical artist. I work mostly between video, performance, sculpture, sound design. I have a very new genres practice, and my practice I view as a metaphysical feminist pursuit to render the strange, sublime, and accessible point of what exists in that space beyond the void come manifest and make it visible. So naturally, I make a lot of videos about butterflies. And recently I've been carving a suite of marble ponytails. So like Raul, carving out of natural materials with my own hands is a big part of not only my art practice, but my own identity as a maker.
Wow.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. My name is Raul De Lara, and I am a sculptor. I primarily work with wood, and I originally was born in Mexico, and I've been in the U.S. for about 16 years. I work a lot with my upbringing in Mexico, that sort of transition into the country here. A lot of my work has to do with how do I get like the stories of like immigrants and Mexican Americans in the country into a form. So I focus a lot on creating a sort of like persona out of my works, the sort of like animated works, and thinking about how can communication be translated, but in like a silent mode. I'm excited to be doing this talk with Virginia. We came up with this format today with our hat here, and we're gonna be pulling out a topic out of the hat, and we're gonna be doing like a speed conversation with it, like a 1-minute talk. And yeah, so we'll get started.
Yep. And so to ensure that we do not go over 1 minute per topic area, since we both are very opinionated about different aspects and attributes of art making, I have the gong to designate the 1 minute point, which will be as so.
All right, so let's get started.
Let's go. And this is truly a random assortment of questions from both of us.
All right, so the first topic is our perception of collectors versus the perception of them to us. What do they want? What do we need?
Oh, I answer it.
Okay, I'll do it. I'll start. It's new to us too, this format, so we're working on it. So 1 minute. Okay, so our perception of collectors and the perception of them to us. So for me, collectors, I feel like we sort of like are this sort of like members of like ideas that they want to participate in, they want to invest their money in. I think they can find artists who sort of like follow the kind of like ethos and like not only like optical interests of them, but also like in a social standard. And then to us, they seem to be like the saviors of our practice sometimes. Yeah. But I'm up to say that we need to like change that in the 21st century and sort of like think more about who is educating the collectors and like the kind of conversations between and make a better connection. Time,
okay.
Go.
So my response to that question, I agree that there needs to be an education of collectors in the 21st century about the importance of supporting artists. Specifically, I would argue local artists. Both Raul and I have art practices that actually expand outside of Texas. We both show internationally. We both show with galleries in New York. That being said, we need help. It's hard. Both of us, I think, have a attributes that are kind of like a similar origin story, in that we both went to UT Austin. We both know what it's like to put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into practices. And as all Texas artists know, we do not have the funding here in Texas for the arts that, say, a European country has. So we need funding.
Hi. All right.
Okay.
Your turn.
Okay, I'm gonna pull it out. Let's see. And I have, in similar to collectors, it is, what is the biggest misconception that collectors have about artists? So, as I was saying, I think the arts is a very complicated place, and we all know that the arts is dependent upon individuals with the means to support individuals like artists that frequently are in a somewhat vulnerable position of not having the economic security, the job security, the opportunity security to be an artist. I think collectors, when they interact with artists, should really understand that at our core, most of us are the weirdos. We were the kids that sat alone at lunchtime in the classroom or wherever, like drawing in our sketchbooks. Many artists really are kind of on the outside of society. And so making money is always tricky and difficult. And I think artists like Raul, I'll just speak on your behalf, and myself, I think we're very good at assimilating ourselves into normal society and coming across as having all the answers, but we still need monetary assistance from collectors.
Yes, so on my end, the misconception I think collectors have is that we have a sort of access to studio space, funding, and like sales at all times or something like that. I meet people who are interested in my work and they don't really question where the work comes from or how it's made. They just think that like as artists, we have like an infinite amount of like support from all kinds, and maybe they like, that's why they kind of backtrack on supporting us because they feel like we're already there.
Yeah, they think we're rock stars. We're magic.
Yeah, and so on that note about the misconception, I think there's an opportunity there to sort of like bridge the gap in conversation, not only of like in terms of sales or showing work. I think there's a lot of ways that like one can support an artist, and yeah, that's where I'm at. I'm like not going myself out.
Excellent. Okay, next question from the magic hat. What we have coming up, or did you want to read?
Go for it.
Okay.
Get one.
How can curators support artists?
Okay. How can curators support artists? So that's a special question. So there's been only a few times in my life that I've been asked by a curator usually through, you know, I end up in a show with a friend or, you know, some sort of like, you know, connection that you have somewhere here and there. Curators directly, you know, I still wonder what exactly is it that they're doing or how they end up with their shows. Because I've talked with like some like curators for like museums, right? And like they'll talk to you and it was a great conversation, but like you don't know if you're gonna have a show there like tomorrow, like in 40 years, you know? So it's like, I guess a little more transparency and like on their behalf because they know what we do and like how we like function in a way as artists. Like we're out here to like make these things. We're here to like sort of like engage with our voices, engage with where like the vision that we come from. And I think they know that, but there's like a sort of like difficulty in like bridging that gap.
Great. How can curators help support artists? I want to echo what you just said about transparency. I think anytime a curator is scheduling a studio visit with an artist, if the intentionality of the studio visit is just to become familiar with an art practice, I want to know that versus if I'm being considered for an opportunity, I want to know that too, especially being an artist that has a really diverse portfolio of works. If I'm working with a curator that's only interested in physical objects for a show they're considering, you know, I'd rather present that artwork to them rather than showing them video art about ponytails for 20 minutes and wasting everyone's time. I also think a great way that curators can support artists once a show has been set up is oftentimes really benefit from having a press or text record of the event. It can be kind of strange as an artist when you feel like you're always putting your work out there and moving, yet you look at your CV and you think, what is the record of this event? Texts are great.
Okay, the next one.
Mm-hmm.
So we have this one. How have residencies affected your practice? So that's a great question. So on my end, when I was studying here at UT, I wasn't really aware of what residencies were or how they functioned. I only found out like my last year that I was there about this one called Oxbow School of Art, and I ended up getting a 2-week sort of funding to go to Oxbow, and it totally like opened my eyes to like the way that like I could participate as an artist. You know, I had a very kind of like strict idea of what being an artist was back then, and then you know Oxbow opened my eyes. Once I finished Oxbow or like UT, I got the fellowship at Oxbow, and that was a full summer, and that was really where like my career sort of kick-started, because I was able to find a community, I was able to find people to get a studio with. I ended up moving to Chicago. That's how I ended up getting the job in the Cave.
Hey.
You know, through like this one residency, all these things came out because it's all these people who are there for that same reason, and that is like to grow, and like as a group is even better.
Yeah, so how do residencies affect artists' practices?
Yep.
I likewise have done a handful of residencies over the years, and how they have brought value to my art practice is also about that community building and making friends. You know, to make it real, I'm someone that a lot of folks assume is an extrovert because I have a very theatrical presence when I'm nervous. But I'm actually a very, very introverted person. I mean, I can easily spend 12 hours a day in Final Cut Pro editing film, not talking to anyone, no problem. So for me, going to a residency is a fantastic way to have these intimate, unstructured moments with other artists when you are drinking cocktails in each other's studios at 3 a.m. or at lunchtime. And that type of social structure is very difficult to achieve outside of the residency environment. It becomes a very safe space to make friends.
All right, your turn.
Okay. All right, the next one I have is
I don't know. we can skip it.
Okay, this one's a little too heavy. We're gonna go to another one. I'm trying not to read them.
There's a whole variety.
Oh yeah, there's some good juicy ones. What is the hardest thing to keep up with in your practice?
All right, that's a good question. So what is the hardest thing to keep up with in my practice?
Keep up with.
Yes. So I think for me, storage was a very difficult one.
Mm-hmm.
Being able to sort of keep up with the sort of like mental capacity to want to make work, have shows, and have somewhere for them to go.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's as a woodworker and as a person that makes this sort of like intricate physical things, it's you know, I envy people that can send a file to like Denmark in like 10 seconds. I can't just send something, right? So like it's just keeping up with it, like learning how to store things, how to ship things. That's definitely probably the hardest part in my practice. Yeah, I'll leave that one there.
Excellent. Hard to keep up with my practice. For me, it's probably having time enough to accomplish everything. Within the past year or so, in my art practice, I've become obsessed with raising moths and butterflies, from eggs to caterpillars to cocoons to flying specimens. And I will say that entire biologic process is very time intensive. And this is kind of a problem I put upon myself, because as an artist, I feel like unless there is genuine labor put forth into an artwork, it's just junk. Mm-hmm. So for me, how do I make these really time-intensive pieces that I believe are still conceptually valuable when trying to participate in the arts, where I feel like we're being asked more and more and more and asked to move faster and faster and faster. And this person likes your show, and then they invite you to do a show just like that a month later. And then I have to be like, my caterpillars haven't finished growing. I'm sorry.
All right. Let's see what we have. Hope everyone's enjoying the intense energy we're putting out. You know, we're having cold brew, and we thought that the system could be something that would be, you know, upbeat and keep the conversation from just going like one long direction, you know, and being able to bring more out of each personalities. So, okay, this is a good one. Why is talking about money a taboo in art schools? So I also posed that question to all of you. You know, why is it a taboo? When I was in undergrad and graduate school, it was, you know, it was kind of like very frowned upon to even bring up the idea of like value to the work. It was always like, oh yeah, you'll magically be in shows, you'll magically have somewhere to go with this work. Sales were never really talked about. Even when I would like reach out to professors about like their sort of history with galleries and their sort of connections with that, they were like, oh, it will happen. It's very organic. It will just happen. And, you know, for someone like me who had to, you know, I can't just like log around like 45, you know, pieces of wood in my life. I'm the kind of person that I also want to make not only a career out of it, but have a financial stability from it. So yeah, I wonder why schools don't teach like how to do your taxes, you know, as artists. Like I had to go to like special classes in Chicago for that, or how to, you know, like what kind of receipts do you keep? What can you like, sort of like log for your taxes? You know, traveling, any time I drive around to get materials, you can put that in your taxes. So there's a lot of things that like nowadays saves me like thousands of dollars a year on my taxes because I know now, but school did not teach me that at all.
Why is talking about money taboo in art schools? I agree that it's something that rarely comes up. I did my BFA as well at the University of Texas, Austin. I never received any type of financial information from classes. If there was a professional studies class about money managing as an artist, it was not present when I did my BFA over 10 years ago. And likewise, I did my MFA at Yale University in sculpture, and I did not receive any type of information about just how to organize receipts. And this is very practical information to have. I would also, in providing an answer to the question, why is talking about money taboo in art schools? My answer to that would actually be somewhat of a historical analysis of the class structure of the art school and where it originates from. I think it's important to remember that art very much so came about as a school training in context with the rise of the bourgeoisie, the middle class that had extra money. And art schools historically were also populated by the upper classes who had children that could pursue interests that
Play the flute.
And there's nothing wrong with being a professional flautist.
Yes.
But I think this is also part of the social conditioning that especially we millennials are fighting against within this era of increased wage disparity. Is like, yeah, there's a social change between who is now attending art schools, who's making up the majority of art schools.
Yep.
You know, things look different when the 99% start to infiltrate all of the higher education systems. That's my answer.
Oh.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
we could talk about that all day.
Yeah, we could. I, as a card-carrying intersectional feminist, I have a lot of thoughts on class. Good question. What inner energies drive you? What are your burdens or your blessings?
Yes.
Energies, burdens, blessings.
Yeah. So I recently watched one of my friend's stories on Instagram, and this question was posed to another artist. What is the energies that carry you? Are they burdens or blessings? I think for me as an artist, it's a mixture of what my goals as a person are, and sort of like realizing those, seeing the works come to life, seeing shows happening, meeting people, meeting places, seeing places, but also in a very real way, and kind of like sobering way, is my sort of role here in society as this, at least not role, but being an immigrant from Mexico who for many years didn't have the chance of like failing or like like going under, or like having to kind of like really quickly tighten up what is it that my practice was, where like I couldn't get like arrested or pulled over, things like that. So that kind of weight also carries me forward to sort of like move away from that, become a better person, and hopefully create a sort of example for like what anyone in my position can also do with their lives.
That's really beautiful. All right.
So intense.
I love it. Yeah, so on the subject of energies that carry one in the art practice, I can think of a really specific example that just happened yesterday. I received a very beautiful DM in my Instagram from another artist who said, hey, I'm someone that suffers from chronic pain. And when I watch those videos of butterflies hatching out of chrysalises, it really gives me hope. And I think that maybe in all the years of making art is one of the most generous and kind things anyone has ever said to me, because knowing that we all carry a lot of pain and trauma within our bodies, but when you're able to alleviate someone else's suffering for just a moment, I mean, that gives me joy as an artist. Because I agree, I mean, it's hard being a empathetic, sentient being on this planet. And my modality of survival is to channel a lot of my frustration into art making and try to channel my intensity into a vision of hope that creates an aura that allows the heart space in each of us to open. And so I think tapping into that energy is what sustains me. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Thanks.
All right. How's it going?
Okay. Do you want to draw the next question?
Sure.
Okay.
All right. So what's 11:24? Cool. We got another like 28 minutes or so before Q&As.
Yeah.
So?
No,
Okay.
let's see. This is 1 hour, so
Yeah.
it's 11:24, 15 minutes.
Okay.
And then 15 minutes for Q&A.
Okay.
And if there are questions, feel free to type them into the chat and we can answer those. Otherwise, we have a pretty full hat, so we can keep, and we have a lot of coffee. We can keep going.
All right. So the next topic, how do you feel about artists who pay other artists to make their own work? Okay. So I used to be a person that believed like, oh, you when I was really young, oh, you need to be making your own work. There's something that like you leave off through your hands and things that you touch. But then when I got a job working for Nick Cave for 2 years, and I saw what like 50 assistants can do for you, a day, I was like, oh wow, you can actually accomplish, years of work. You can pack like 10 years of work in one with having extra hands. I don't know if I would want to have 50 people. I don't even know what I could give to like 3 people, but I'm all for it. And I also think there's nothing wrong with sort of like sometimes there's things that you need for your artwork that are not like your expertise, right? Like if I need to get something 3D printed, like I personally am like anti-computers. That's a different story, but like
I love computers.
Yeah, so,
I do.
Yin yang here. So anything that like if I need a 3D model or anything render, like I will gladly pay somebody to deal with software for me. So yeah.
So paying other artists in the process of making your own work, I would say that the optimal functioning word in that sentence is pay. I think if you are an artist and you're interested in making something that is 3D printed and that's outside of your wheelhouse of skills, totally reach out to someone, but pay them. I think every artist should be paid fairly for their labor. And I agree with Raul, there are times in your own artistic practice where you want to accomplish something and you just don't have that technical skill set. And I think there's no shame in reaching out to a friend to do something for you. For example, in my own art practice, I frequently like submerge my hands in viscous liquids and film it. And when I'm in the process of doing that, I need someone to be able to click the on button on the camera across the room. And, it's helpful to have that person there, but I would also say pay them for their labor and their time. Yeah.
Oh.
Okay, next one. Okay, not this one. Not this one. Okay, this is a good one, very relevant to the right now. What has kept your artistic career afloat during COVID? What has kept my artistic career afloat during COVID? A combination of both applying for small grants, especially one that I believe was sponsored through Big Medium. So have you done the round of applause on Zoom?
No.
Okay, so this was taught to me recently on what you can do to applaud an idea, and you literally do a round of applause. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I want to give a round of applause to Big Medium and other arts organizations that have been using this time during COVID to provide micro grants to sustain the community. It makes a huge difference. So I have been somewhat coasting on tiny grants, and luckily some of my freelance work has been Zoom integrated, but I don't know. I have to be honest that this past year has been hard for me. My day job beforehand was all about getting on an airplane every week and going out to tech conferences and doing live visual services there, akin to whiteboarding. And I can't travel on airplanes, so it's really hard for me to earn an income. But otherwise, I'm just hustling.
You're always hustling.
Story of my life.
So how have I been staying afloat?
Yeah.
Also, I've been fortunate enough to have some support from grants, from like COVID grants from different organizations. Thank you. Like Virginia said, I think a lot of my friends have been able to stay afloat from that. Also, I was fortunate enough to be at a fellowship when COVID started.
Oh, cool. That's right.
Yeah. I was living in Provincetown at the Fine Arts Work Center, and they even extended our stay for 2 months. They were very flexible on us having a sort of like smooth entrance into like the new COVID world. So I guess what I would say is staying afloat through the arts community really, and it's pretty amazing to see how our community has come out to help in a very direct way, and I feel you can see it all around. So I'll go myself out.
Great. You want to draw one?
All right, let's see. What do we have here? How did you kickstart your career after undergrad/graduate school? Who did this? So, like I said earlier, when I finished undergrad, I had kind of like no true plan on what I was gonna do, but I knew I wanted to move somewhere outside of Austin. Not because I don't like it here, but like I wanted to like experience a little more. I wanted to meet new people. I wanted to see sort of like, it was like the year that I discovered residencies. So I was like, oh, like let's see what they're about.
Yeah.
And I ended up going to Michigan, to Oxbow. I met some people there who wanted to get a studio space in Chicago. So I went there, and through like the power of the community, we had this like really big studio that otherwise I could not afford it. And then being around like 4 other artists in the same building, just that are like actively working, helped me really sort of like see that one, there's a way to like start, and like there's like the process is to just like get started. And 2, I also got into a residency in Chicago. That was a year-long residency called Chicago Artists Coalition, and they provided you with 2 shows and an immediate community.
Wow.
With like meetings once a month for crits.
Oh, that's great.
So that was like really kind of what kickstarted my like momentum into like really seeing how the art community works?
Oh, so good question. I can provide a somewhat alternate situation. Right out of undergrad, I did not have any type of vision for what the career of being an artist was. I have to say that I really wish that as an undergraduate art student, I had had some type of mentorship or guidance on how I could orient my energy and my time to be an artist. I don't think I fully understood what contemporary art even looked like as a career. And, you know, I would also say that if you are an artist that doesn't come from a family of other artists, or you don't come from a family with a cousin who's a curator, it can be very difficult to even know how to like enter it. I mean, so I spent my early 20s not doing residencies, not applying to art shows, but instead I was very excited at the idea of getting to live in New York City. So I moved up to New York City and instantly realized how incredibly expensive it was, and worked my butt off doing simultaneously a few different jobs, and actually fell into a job in marketing and advertising as a methodology to support myself because it offered healthcare, and this was like pre-Obamacare days. So long story short, I didn't make art for many years after undergrad. And it wasn't until I was just building up this reservoir of very bizarre, surreal experiences in my subconscious from working in New York City's marketing and advertising fields that that stuff started like forcing its way into objects as I was trying to really grasp my own sanity. I really believe in the, you know, as Louis Bourgeois says, art is very much so the act of sublimation. So you're taking your internal world and trying to find a way of physicalizing it, really for the sanity of your own mind. That being said, I applied to grad school and kind of got in, I feel like on a fluke. And so
We all do.
yeah, and so my career really came manifest when I was in grad school. And so I was very fortunate that I went to grad school because I met other artists that I could just kind of watch and see what they were doing and mimic them.
Cheers.
Yeah. Okay, next question. All right. Ooh, this is a good one. This is a saucy question. If you could erase one artist from art history, who would you pick and why?
You start.
I put in this question. This might be very upsetting for some people, but I just want to propose a world where there is no Picasso.
Okay.
What would that look like? What would a world with no Picasso look like? And I say that only because all my life I've been very interested in the fact that Picasso is very emblematic of like the ideal artist, the ultimate, the guru.
Yeah.
And if that individual in that place were to be erased, what would be there instead?
Love that.
Yeah.
All right. So for me, I would say not Picasso, but I would say Duchamp.
Woo!
I think he did a great job at turning, as we know, anything into art.
Yeah.
And I think that, again, like you, like it's not that I'm against what he stands for, but I'm more interested in what the world would look like
Exactly.
if there was a sort of like, maybe not division of what art is, what art isn't, but a sort of a more intimate connection with the kind of like physicality of being an artist. That I like, you know, have an idea about what that looks like. But I think that would be the one.
Yeah, that's a good one. All right.
All right. How can artists prevent burnout? It's pretty good.
That's a really good question. Yeah.
So I personally, I listen to my body. I did do a lot of physical labor, and there were years like in undergrad where I wouldn't, and I was always in pain for some reason. and I thought that, carving away and sanding and all, like it was more driven by like adrenaline and excitement. It still is, but I didn't
Yeah.
get to a point where it starts like hurting or like it gets in the way. And like for me, my body is like once it starts getting in the way of what I'm doing, it sort of like starts dividing my attention from the vision. So I, instead of carving 12 hours straight, I do 5, instead of, because a lot of my practice is like sanding. So instead of like sanding for like a week straight, I'll like split it into like different motions, different muscles. And that would be the physical side, but the emotional and sort of like psychological side, I try to limit my social media engagement. I try to limit like how much art I much what would you say? I overthink things. I think I definitely, sometimes like for me that's like the burnout moment when I like overthink a piece and then like it's like before I even started, like it already feels resolved in a way and I never make it. So
that's a good one. I completely agree about what you said in terms of looking at the physical labors that you're engaged with in your art practice and trying to structure them into chunks of time that operate in service of the body. I similarly have found that when I do marble carving and I'm using something that is like a large vibrating tool, like a grinder with a blade, and that vibration is really tough on your hands for more than 3 hours straight. So when I actually think about making an artwork, I do the very dorky thing of opening up my Google Calendar and I look at how many hours I have in the week to work on artworks. And for me, that also exists outside of other duties I have to my day job. So I know, okay, I'm going to be on Zoom transcribing tech conference information for this many hours. So while I'm doing that, I can like rest my shoulder muscles because I won't be marble carving. And then right after that, I can immediately jump outside and marble carve, do that for 3 hours, then return to my computer and do administrative emails for a few more hours. So it is really good to look at your practice, look at the different labors, because I had a really good friend in grad school who was a former dancer, a movement research dancer. And Maggie, if you are watching this, I love you, but her with this background of dance, I think the way dancers treat their bodies and are very cautious about what movements they engage in, what they eat. It may sound extreme, but if you are someone that's trying to make art that is very physical, like sculpture, or I would say film editing. I mean, we all know you can't stare at a computer screen for 10 hours straight and have healthy eye vision. So you have to think about these things if you're trying to produce artwork on a deadline. Yeah. Awesome.
So we have 20 minutes. Should we do a few more and then hop into Q&A, or what's the...
Let's see. I'm just going to go up to the computer screen and look at the chat.
All right.
And see if there's anything juicy in there. Hi, Paloma.
Hi, there are.
Oh, great.
So do you want me to read them out to you so you can sit back, or do you want to?
Yeah, that'd be perfect. Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, so I'll start with one that was in the chat from Ingrid Tremblay. And this is a question from Ingrid and Anika. They asked, what is your favorite carving tool? Our guess is Raul is chisels and Virginia is angle grinder.
Wow.
You start. You start.
It's true. I love my angle grinder so much. You can just do everything with an angle grinder.
Yep.
It's really like the all-purpose tool. You can carve with it. You can cut with it. You can carve stone with it. You can like whack off pieces of wood with it. It's just, I just love my angle grinder so much. I love it. And I love that I can buy new blades for it and it just keeps on going.
Yep.
And that the blades aren't that expensive either. Yeah, I have a Makita angle grinder. I can't exactly remember what model it is, but it is probably like the standard Makita angle grinder. invest in one. They're a wonderful tool.
So, hi Ingrid. So chisels are actually not my favorite. They're actually find ways to avoid using them. I usually use them for like fine tuning things at the very end. But angle grinders are great.
Yeah.
But my new favorite tool that I wish I knew existed 20 years ago, it's called Fordham, rotary tool. And it's basically a motor with a shaft and a bit. It's kind of like the dentist tool, but it's for, it has a pedal that you control the speed.
That's like a giant Dremel.
Yeah, it's got like, have horsepower. And for me, that's been so nice because it's kind of like holding a chisel, but with that, like, it magically just erases material from like the world.
Oh my gosh. So poetic. I love it.
So, yeah.
Awesome. Let's see. We have a question from Jose Chavez. He said, "Hi, y'all. First of all, thank you for this incredible talk. My question is related more toward your earlier entry point into the arts because I'm volunteering with youth in South Central Los Angeles. I was curious if you could share some of the advice or some advice for them about how you navigated getting into art school and some of the challenges and rewards of pursuing the practice. Thank you."
That's such a beautiful question. I can tell you what my experience was. I hit a point in my mid-20s where I knew very much so that I wanted to get a master's in art. And I took a chunk of time to make a portfolio and really think thoughtfully about every piece that was in the portfolio, think about how I would describe it in language that was descriptive of the work, but also interesting to read. Because remember, you want to always provide something of interest to the reader or the viewer. And I also reached out to former faculty and asked for letters of rec. And I gave it enough time so all that wasn't rushed because I knew that the faculty would be busy. I wanted them to have a few months to respond. And I think it's important to sit down and just kind of plot it out. Make a vision board. I know it might seem like a very cliche exercise, but take out a big piece of paper, draw small squares that are representative of 10 art pieces that you want to make, cut out those squares, and then on the piece of paper on the table, think like, where do I want to put these squares? And you can draw like UCLA. I really want to go to grad school at UCLA. And then I'm serious, take that little piece of paper under your finger and move that artwork of yours into UCLA. I think things like that are incredibly helpful for, preparing the mind to bring those ideas manifest.
All right. I agree with all that. I also have a pretty intense system for like getting into grad school. I wrote like 300 pages for like a year and then like synthesized it into like one page for my application.
That's a great exercise.
But I would say for like someone like, Travis said, working with the youth, I would say paying more attention to what you're sort of like naturally gravitate towards as a person of any kind of background. Like, what is it that you want to like be working with? What is it that you're like sort of like, what is it like the substance that like you get like drawn to? Because I used to think when I was applying to school, like I think why I got rejected a lot was like because I was writing about art in the way that I thought art was about. So I was like, this is what an artist does. Therefore, let me plug myself in and be like, this is why I'm an artist. And like, now that I look back and see, I'm like, my essays, I'm like, wow, this is like the worst, So
I bet they're not that bad.
Yeah. So, and in terms of working with like the kind of like benefits, or not benefits, but like something special, like if it's like applicable to the question, one of my friends who like, we have a very different life, he told me he's a mechanic, like, a lot of different ideologies and like political stand and all. He was like, man, like, I don't understand why you carve wood. I don't understand what these things are. They're goofy. They're weird. Like, I have no idea what this artist thing is, but seeing you care so much about something makes me care about like the way I put a wheel in a car. It makes me care about like making a good impression in this oil change, and sort of like how care into something as like abstract as a piece of wood translates for someone else, I think is something that like any art practice can share. So
Yeah.
That's really good advice. And I think that this actually segues really well into this next question by Sid Gottlieb. Some of us are working on the ground level with super local communities where it can be difficult to reach our coastal communities, and each scene may not be conscious of the realities that artists face when interacting with the other. How do you bridge the two in your own creative languages?
okay, so and just to be clear, you said coastal communities versus local.
Yes.
Okay, so I am a full believer in sliding into people's DMs. uh, like no, but what I mean is like there's been so many times where like I go to like LA or New York or like Iowa, you know, like anywhere, and there's an artist that I follow or a person that I really want to meet. Generally, like people are nice, you know. I had the chance to like meet so many people, even when I was applying to graduate school or undergrad. I just reached out to anyone and everyone. You know, I think there's now in the world like it's become apparent that like people are struggling, people are confused, people have a hard time living, and people want to help. You know, and I think it's a great time to ask for help, especially ask for like what you want. You know. So.
Yeah, I love that. I love everything you said. I would also build on that and offering, you know, the concept of reaching different people from different communities. How do you do that within specific art making languages? You know, there's many different modalities to make art, but if you're someone that is interested, I believe, in reaching a large audience, I'd say like dig deep into what those core symbols are that really resonate with many different people. And specifically I'm speaking to is kind of that psychological Jungian framework of this is a rock, what does a rock represent? This is a tree, what does a tree represent? And I believe deeply that these symbols are very cross-cultural, they have a lot of resonance, and they become a very powerful artistic framework for connection. And you could even abstract that further and say it doesn't have to be a tree, it could be representative of nature. Most of us have a relationship with nature. So regardless if you are located in a community in the Great Plains or on the coast or in the Pacific Northwest, everyone has a relationship to what nature is on a sensorial level. Because I take it a step further and say, you know, the one thing that really unites most of us on planet Earth is that we have a somewhat similar framework for engaging properties of heat and cold and perception and sound. And this might sound very philosophical, but seriously tap into that, because that is, I believe, our shared language of experience, like at its core and at its most raw. So, you know, as Raul said earlier about people also going through a lot of pain right now, you know, look at what counters pain, like what are moments of pleasure that artwork can provide for other people? How can artwork provide feelings of safety or joy or expression or community? And I feel like tap into those spaces, because I also love interacting with artists around the country, and I'm someone that's always willing to walk up to an artist at a show and just be like, I love your work. I frequently am too shy to say anything beyond that, but I think also just providing that type of interpersonal feedback is really helpful, because you know, the art world doesn't have to be an abstract, scary place. I mean, it kind of is, but remember, we are all artists, we are all freaks here. We can always be friends with each other because we are weirdos.
Correct.
Yeah. So just remember, like that artist that you don't know across the room, that's like your goth best friend from 7th grade. And like, go say hi.
Get the gong out.
Yeah, get the gong out. Where is it?
Yep. What?
That's great. I definitely feel that. Let's see. We have one question from Selva Aparicio. Hola, Raul in Virginia. How do you balance your personal life with art practice, given that the art world is so time consuming? It's a 24/24 job. How do you keep your friends happy?
That's a lot of questions at once. So,
How do you balance your personal life with your art practice? I think is
yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
essence of that one.
So that's that was one of the questions in the hat that we were, discussing, on like a very transparent, personal way. Like for me, like the friends that have sticked around are the friends that understand like my sort of like intensity as a maker and as a person. I understand that I'm like a very kind of like intense person that matches with my work, and a lot of my sort of like life revolves around the work that I want to be making and like the kind of trips I want to do with the work, the kind of like people I want to meet. And these people, like for me, I think about them as cacti, and like they like
Oh, I
can
love
like
that. I love that.
they can sort of you water them. You don't have to water them every day, and they stay alive. They're long term. They can go through like hardships, resilience.
Resilient friendship.
Yeah, and then for like relationships, like dating and all that, like I have had a hard time keeping a relationship. I kind of like give up on dating for a while because I found that it was hard for me to find somebody that could sort of like psychically or kind of like spiritually keep up with like, or not keep up with, like understand that like I'm in this like weird journey where like I'm gonna go for like a week to the desert and like hike with a sculpture on my back, and like finding somebody that's like understands that is one thing, but like finding somebody that like treasures that and values it is another. So it's been hard, but it's it's all good. I think there's so many good people to meet out there, and there's like a lot of lessons that you learn from like each one. So
Yeah, yeah. Selva, I love you. Thank you for asking this question. Selva and I had studios side by side for a year, so love knowing that she's watching now. Yeah, so art making and interpersonal relationships, it is really tough to figure out how to balance it all. As I revealed before, I am a manic scheduler, and so I have my Google Calendar with all my chunks of time. And when it comes to seeing friends, I just schedule it in. And I will say it's hard sometimes to want to be that bohemian artist who's down to hang for 4 hours straight. I often am like, I got 45 minutes, let's go. And if you can find another neurotic type A personality, it works beautifully. But, similarly, I've been teased over the years for being, eccentrically idiosyncratic with my scheduling. But it's the only way that I find to be able to accomplish everything. I'm also someone that really prioritizes health and well-being. I guess this circles back to the question of burnout, but art making and having an art practice, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. So think about taking care of yourself. Sleep enough, do your meditation, do your exercise, whatever your body needs. And also, remember to make time to see friends. You need to have your community. And if it's not right at that moment to spend time with people in person because you got a lot of work coming up, or, my usual situation is I would travel all the time for my freelance job as a graphic facilitator. So I'd often text people and be like, hey, I wish I could hang out, but I'm stuck at the Atlanta Convention Center Hilton for the next 6 days straight. And so I'm very active on social media as a way to remedy that. And I'm also really into sending postcards, snail mail. I've really embraced snail mail during COVID. So I think it's all about just finding these different hacks to get through, the challenges of like making artwork and then also being a human being and having friends. And then as far as dating goes, I have no suggestions there. I'm like, when people ask me what my sexuality is, I usually say butterfly. I just kind of fly around, and anyway, that's all I got. That's all I got
That's
on
great.
that. Yeah, here we go. Oh, a very
chill.
gentle one.
Yeah,
A very
that's nice.
gentle one.
That's great. Let's see. I think that you guys have already touched on this with several of the things that you've said, but Moises Salazar asked if you have any other advice for someone thinking about going to grad school. So any other like final thoughts on grad school?
Oh,
Yeah, I would say spend the money documenting your work properly.
mhm.
So one of my like pro tips or like life tips for an artist at any given point would be to learn how to use a camera, learn how to photograph your work, because I think there's a personality in the sculptures or paintings or artwork that we make that we are the only ones that can see it. So sometimes like if the work is photographed by someone else, it doesn't really capture that kind of like energy that you want to like translate with your work for an application, in general. But and then other times you get like a great application, because I've sat in like some like reviews for grad school for like applicants, and they have a great kind of like energy around their practice, but the photographs are really blurry. They're like messy, they like formatted wrong. So I would say a pro tip would be just like really take care of the documentation. And another one would be to see the kind of like faculty that they have in the program and the kind of students that come out of the program. I know that like that's to some people common sense, but like for me it wasn't. I thought I was more interested in like the excitement of the artists that were like the students in there and not the faculty. And then when I realized like, oh, they're the ones that kind of like shaping up your like raw thoughts, it became clear. And not only look at the program that you're looking at, but like the kind of like general art school, because it could be like your dream artist that works in the other department that you're not in, but you can connect with.
Those are really good points. I would also add, when looking at an MFA program, really look at the specific features of that MFA program. For example, certain universities allow their MFA students to take classes outside of just the art school. So you could have the opportunity to take classes with a world-renowned anthropologist. And if you happen to have a very identity-oriented art practice, talking with that genius anthropologist might be the extra, secret sauce to making your art practice expand.
Yeah.
However, some art schools situated within big research universities do not allow their MFA art students to take classes outside the art school.
Yep.
And so do that research, because they're not all, one size fits all. I brought up UCLA earlier. UCLA is a great example of an MFA program that does encourage you to go outside the art school. And as we all know, they have amazing, social justice programs that operate in conjunction with the university. So there is a lot of value in doing, say, an MFA program within a larger research university, because you have access to all those different genius professors in linguistics, in sciences, et cetera, et cetera. The other bit of advice that I would offer in terms of structuring your portfolio is advice that I learned from actually being a part of the Yale Sculpture MFA portfolio review. It's part of the Yale Sculpture program. This is not all of the Yale School of Art, but just sculpture. You get to see the profiles of the incoming class and provide feedback. It may not actually have any sway over ultimately what the faculty pick, because they are the ones that hold the power about choosing. But you do get to see the portfolios, which is a phenomenal gift, because it allows you to look at how art, let's say, as information can be presented and how it can be effectively received.
Yep.
So to echo back what Raul said, clear photos are really important. I know that, as artists, and I'm guilty of this, I like things that are, obscure and complicated. And I've had to really force myself to, look at my artwork as if I've never seen it before and I have no idea what it's about, and how would I explain it to a 5-year-old child?
Yeah.
So think about like what image you would show, and then what 2 sentences you would write.
Yep.
And don't get caught up in trying to emulate the very performative, verbose language that contemporary art presents itself within. It's hard, because there are folks that they request that, but I would say the art faculty that you're presenting your artwork in front of, they're savvy enough to know what is art versus what is a thing that has a bunch of pretty language around it. So, you know, put your energy towards making your art, honor your art practice, and then think about communicating it clearly, and nice bright pictures. And then also keep in mind that the faculty that's looking at your portfolio, they're also looking at hundreds of other portfolios. And you know how tired you get when you're looking at a bunch of information, you know, like during an exam or reading. So just like imagine that mental fatigue that they're experiencing, and then imagine like crafting your portfolio to be like an arrow that can shoot through that mental blur and penetrate into their minds.
Accepted.
That's what you want to do. You got to cut through all that noise. That's my advice.
Wow.
That's all really good advice. Well, we've kind of reached our time, but I do want to give y'all a chance to say if, are y'all, I know that both of you are a part of the Austin Studio Tour that begins this weekend. Are you hosting anything virtually, or can we experience your art outdoors? Anything like that that y'all have coming up?
So I can start. So I will be, you know, starting this weekend and a week, be sharing through social media and my website, you know, like in conjunction with Big Medium, or photographs of my studio process. I think that's something that I really want to get into, sharing with you know, people that they don't generally get to like share that aspect of my practice. And also like I've been working on stories, like text-based stories about like the sort of like energies that carry my work, or like the strange research that I end up in, or like journeys to like gather material, things like that. So I definitely want to do a more of like a personal connection with the community, rather than just like here's more art. You know, I do have and will have a new series of leaves that I make for sale, for, you know, for the special, you know, occasion. But yeah, that's gonna be my connection to the studio. I wish I had a studio live here right now, but I'm in the process of like shifting studios, and it's COVID. So yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. And then for the Austin Studio Tour, I'm offering a virtual programming event. It is going to be a Zoom art talk between myself and the absolutely brilliant curator and writer, Nicole Cack, who is based out of New York City. She's currently in Wisconsin. She is brilliant. She formerly worked at MoMA and Air Gallery in New York City. She's amazing. And her and I are going to have a conversation that is very specific to my conceptual interest at large, which is panpsychic feminist metaphysics. So looking at metaphysical philosophy and its intersection with animism, and looking at non-human objects in art making, like rocks or trees, and what are the different attributes of agency and engagement, and the different dilemmas around interacting with them. That's going to be our conversation. It is happening on November 14th at 2 p.m. Central, 3 p.m. Eastern. And if you're interested in coming, there is a Zoom link on the Big Medium website, or feel free to DM me on Instagram. My Instagram is Skinny Aliens, and I'll send you a Zoom link. So I'm very excited
everyone,
about that.
slide into both of their DMs. They'll be happy to share more information.
Wow, yeah.
Well, thank you both so much. This was such a great coffee chat. I think both myself and a lot of the participants really enjoyed the format of pulling topics out of your magic hat. So thank you both so much for joining us today. And for everyone else that wants to find out more information about both Raul and Virginia's work, they will be having their individual profiles on the Austin Studio Tour website, which is austinstudiotour.org. And we hope to see you all this weekend. Thank you all so much.
Yeah, thank you all so much. Have a wonderful day.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.